Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Kent.
On this week's show, the Blackhawks are finally facing some adversity and why you'd be insane to take a face shield off when preparing to line up against the Zdeno Chara.
We'll also take a look at the Memorial Cup, no checking in Canada, eh? And the rotten Big Apple.
Let's drop the puck on episode 8. All right, Doug, here we go. Western Conference is where we're going to start. That's where we always tend to start, and I think this week it's especially appropriate given the fact that the only two series still going on right now are in the Western Conference. We are recording this on Memorial Day. This is our holiday. And I guess we should start with Chicago-Detroit because that game's going on tonight. What a series that has been. I think a lot of people are shocked by the fact that the Red Wings are up 3-2. This is a tough series for me as far as just rooting interest. I think a lot of people are this way. If you don't like the Red Wings or the Blackhawks, you generally dislike them. But this is a pretty entertaining series, probably the best in this second round of these playoffs.
What I find disturbing with this series, though, is that it's 3-2 now. It was 3-1. It's not like it went 1-1, 2-2, 3-2. It went Chicago won the first one, and then Detroit won the next 3. And I'm like, uh-oh.
And you have to be scared if you're a Detroit fan that Chicago might return the favor and win the next 3 because they're so capable of doing it. And I mean, they had won 7 or 8 in a row against Detroit coming into this series. Mm-hmm. So just in general, they had won that many in a row. You know, they lose the 3 in a row in this series. They hadn't lost 3 in a row all year. Obviously, they barely lost any games all year. They hadn't been shut out all year until Game 4, and they came back at home with a big effort in Game 5 to get the win. You and I were talking off the air. Whoever wins this game tonight, I think, wins the series. I would not count Chicago out at all.
I don't think you can count Chicago out. I mean, Quenneville's making changes. He's changing things up. He's not staying, this is my lineup. I'm going to live or die with this lineup. We talked before that I think is a brilliant move to put Seabrook and Duncan Keith back together. I made the comparison of watching Seth Jones and Derek Poulet in the Memorial Cup this weekend. You know, when there's guys that have chemistry, and we've talked about chemistry, how important chemistry is not only on the ice, in the room. To me, it's just an underrated X factor that people just don't talk about. Yeah. Most pundits are always talking about he scored this many goals, he had this many assists, he's this big, he's that fast. Sometimes when you get a group of guys together, that chemistry's got to be there. And if that chemistry's not going to be there, bad things are going to happen, a.k.a. New York Rangers. And we'll get there later in the podcast. But it's true. And they found success in Game 5. And the quotes after the game, it's a comfort zone. They just feel really comfortable on the ice together.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Chemistry you obviously can't measure on paper, and you can't measure how two players are going to play together on paper. And it's not necessarily the fast guys play well together, or a fast guy and a slower guy. You just have to see it on the ice. And by this point in the year, and certainly those are two players that aren't new to Chicago. So Joel Quenneville knew what he had, and Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith. You have to go with what gives you the best chance on any given line. I know there's always that thought of, well, here's 2, I'm not even saying that's the case in this situation, but here's 2 of our best defenders. We want to spread them out. You see it a lot with forwards on teams. They want to have 2 or 3 good lines, so they spread their players out. At this point in the game, you have to put your best players together if they work well together.
You have got to, especially on the blue line. I mean, it's important in the playoffs just to have that strong goaltending, that strong D. You need that. Yes, you need offense and stuff, but you need that strong defensive core to be able to shut things down and push the puck up the ice. And I personally thought Seabrook kind of had a soft year. And it's nice in Game 5 to actually, because I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah.
I like to play defense myself, and I'm a big fan of his. And it's just nice to see it click. Quenneville trying to find that chemistry. We see coaches juggle lines all the time, and they're trying to get something to work. And usually when it works, you ride that wave until it washes up on the beach. So hopefully, tonight those two will be together again, and they'll find some success. And you're right. If Chicago wins tonight and it goes to a Game 7, I think Chicago takes the series. If Detroit wins, tips, they win the series because they've got...
Thanks for the breaking news. Well, in general, my thought is if Detroit gets to a Game 7 and you've got Datsuk and Zetterberg on the ice, they're going to win. But I don't know if that's the case in this series. I don't think people can write Detroit off if it goes to a Game 7 necessarily, but my pick coming in, I think everybody's pick was Chicago. And you and I both took Detroit in round 1, so it's not like we were discounting what the Red Wings could do. It's all about how Chicago handles adversity now. And I talked to you about this 2 or 3 months ago when everybody was ready to hand them the Stanley Cup because they weren't losing in regulation in the first 20 games of the regular season, 24 games or whatever it was. And that's great. I don't know if they peaked too early, but the flip side to that is whether they peak too early or not, they're facing adversity for the first time in the middle of a playoff series. They haven't been tested all year. They haven't even really had injuries. I know Patrick Sharp missed some games, but they haven't been pushed. Now you're pushed, and all of a sudden you can't lose again.
Right. And the other thing that I take away from this is that Detroit barely made the playoffs. Okay, and they're in the semis now. If Detroit wins today, they're going to be awfully hard to stop. I think whether LA wins their series or San Jose wins that series, Detroit's going to be awfully, awfully tough to stop.
Yeah, they've had a real nice rebuilding year in Detroit where they're supposed to be working in all these new players and learning to adjust to life without Nicholas Lidstrom, and they're about to go to the conference finals and maybe beyond. The flip side to that, though, yes, Detroit, if they come out of the series and they've taken out Anaheim and Chicago, who I think were everybody's 2 picks to come out of the West, I guess LA too, but if they've taken those 2 teams out, they have a ton of momentum. If Chicago, though, comes out of the series now, they're going to be riding a 3-game winning streak, so they have a ton of momentum.
And they're not going to have a lot of downtime.
Which is good when you have momentum.
When you have momentum. If Chicago can win today and Game 7, they take that momentum into the conference final. Whoever wins the San Jose LA Kings series better be ready because they're going to be – that team is so deep talent-wise that they're going to have their hands full. And
they're just – I mean, let's switch over, I guess, to San Jose and LA. Those 2 teams are just beating each other up. Mm-hmm. And that's the way LA plays, and it obviously is very – successful for them. I mean, they just won Stanley Cup last year. They're cruising, at least for the most part, through these playoffs when they're at home. And this team doesn't lose games at home. They haven't lost a home game since March 23rd. It is May 27th.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty nice record to have, especially when you have home ice advantage in a series, and that's why this is going to be tough for San Jose on Tuesday.
Yeah, but you're right. They're both 2 physical teams. They've been bashing each other up a bit. I thought San Jose looked really good yesterday. They looked like the San Jose I thought was going to be there every game.
Yeah, you picked San Jose. I picked LA coming into the series. Obviously, either one of us could be right at this point, but the Sharks have impressed me because they sweep through Vancouver in the first round. Vancouver, they're just such head cases. You don't know if the Sharks played a tough team or not. Sometimes you beat Vancouver once, and then the series is essentially over.
I think Vancouver beat themselves.
Yeah.
Which was a nice gift to San Jose. San Jose's got themselves in the middle of a battle. I still think they can pull it out.
And they've responded well. And look, I mean, you look back to some of the earlier games in the series, Game 2, if it's not for that delay of game call, maybe the series is over. Although you could make the same case for the Kings. They basically had a goal just wiped out. And I think it was Game 3 or Game 4 where they could have easily. So there's been a couple tough breaks there for both teams. You like to at least see it even out. But yeah, Game 7 in the playoffs is as good as it gets. We got to see a couple of them in round 1, but this one, it's probably going to be 2-1 or 1-0, but it's going to be pretty epic.
Yeah, and once again, we're sitting here waiting for the West to sort its mess out. But this is what we want in the playoffs. This is what the NHL wants in the playoffs. This is what I want as a hockey fan because there's not a whole lot of hockey going on, so stretch it out, boys. Give me 7 games in every series.
Yeah,
let's go right down.
We don't need 5.
And let's go to overtime, and let's go to 3 overtimes. Give me something to watch.
And the West is so good at that because, as we've been saying all year, and we're not the only ones saying that, but everybody's so bunched up in the West. Mm-hmm. There's 7, 8, 9 very good teams in the West. The East, we have the top 2 teams, I think, coming into the season everybody would have picked, and they both kind of cruised through the conference semifinals. One last note on LA, though. It's now 32 straight playoff games. They've given up 3 goals or less. They haven't given up more than 3 goals in 32
That's huge.
Playoff games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw it last year with Quick. Quick stood on his head. I mean, if it wasn't for him, again, we go back to you have to have great goaltending in the playoffs. Major League Baseball, you have to have great pitching in the playoffs.
And they play good defense in front of them, too.
And that happens when you got a good goalie. Your blue liners are going to be on top of it. And the other thing with that, though, too, is that when you have goaltending that's that good, defensemen will take a few more liberties, and they'll be a little bit more aggressive because, and not so much defensemen, but the whole team. The whole team will be a little bit more aggressive because if they make a mistake, they know they got somebody they can trust and somebody that's 9 times out of 10 is going to stop the puck.
Yeah, it's a great situation because you want to make good plays for your goalie because he's making good plays for you. But also, like you said, you can be more aggressive. More than anything, you just don't have to play tight. You can't play hockey tight. And you see these teams when their goalies are letting in bad goals, all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, I can't skate up the ice and try and score because if we let anybody shoot on our goalie, it's going in.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. You're a defenseman in the offensive zone. You pinch in, the puck squirts out. Your defensive partner doesn't make it over in time, but yet you got a goalie that's going to save the day or buy you some time until you can get back into the zone. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about guys being able to do things that they normally wouldn't, and they'd be playing tight. Nobody can play. You can't play tight.
Frustrates the other team too. Which and Quick has played great. I don't get the sense that San Jose is frustrated, but I do think we saw it in the St. Louis series where the Blues just. And they felt like they played well enough to win, and they probably did against a lot of teams, but they caught LA and they caught Jonathan Quick, and they caught him when he made 2 bad plays, and he was still outstanding.
Right.
So it's interesting because you've got a team like LA that is better than they look on paper, and I think we have a team like that in the East that we'll talk about next. Over to the Eastern Conference now, the 2 teams I think everybody, if you had to pick at the start of the year, maybe not at the start of the playoffs because Boston was kind of bouncing around, you didn't know what to expect from them, but I think there's no real surprise at this point that we have Pittsburgh and Boston remaining in the Eastern Conference, 2 very different teams, which I think is going to make for a great series. Obviously, the Penguins right now are just, nobody can stop them. Craig Anderson had a phenomenal regular season. The last 2 games of that series, the Penguins scored 13 goals, but the Bruins, much like the Penguins, have been here before, and the Bruins know how to get it done with defense. They know how to grind out wins. They have excellent goaltending, excellent defense. This is, in my mind, a classic contrast between 2 very different styles of teams, and we're going to see if offense or defense wins out.
I also think that got the offense-defense coin, so which one's you're going to flip the coin and which one's going to land heads up. But I think physicality is also going to dictate a lot in this series. Boston's big. Boston's physical. That last game against the Rangers tried to get under their skin. Boston took a couple of dumb penalties, but it didn't work. I mean, Boston just outplayed them. Boston outplayed them that whole series. We got our 1-4. I think we've got the 2 top teams in the East playing. I think it worked out well for the East.
Boston could have easily been number 2 the way the season. I mean, they win that last game against Ottawa in the regular season. They're the 2 seed.
I would take Pittsburgh over Boston in this series. I think this series has the makings to go 7 games. Pittsburgh won the season series against Boston.
Yeah, they cruised over them, which is so strange to me.
3-zip. So but again, it's like, I'll go back to the Toronto series, and I watched a team that I didn't think was going to win 1 game. The playoffs in this sport are just such a different game that even though Pittsburgh easily won the series against them in the regular season, they're not going to have that cakewalk in the playoffs. They're just not going to have it. The leading scorer in the playoffs is on Boston.
It's not one of Pittsburgh's. Pittsburgh has 2, 3, and 4, but the leading scorer is David Krejci of the Boston Bruins. We were looking at the stats. Nathan Horton, a plus 14 in the playoffs. Boston's been here before. Here's the stat to throw at you, though, as I'm looking at this. There's 6 teams left. 5 of them are the last 5 Stanley Cup winners, and they all have their key players from those cups. I mean, that's not a coincidence.
No.
Pittsburgh, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, L.A., obviously not in that order, but the last 5 cup winners, what are they? L.A., Boston, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit. That's going backwards in time.
Right.
And all the key players are there. It's still Taves and Kane. It's still Zetterberg and Datsuk. It's still Quick. It's still Crosby and Malkin and Letang. It's still, the Bruins, it's still Marchand. I guess it's not Tuukka Rask.
Chara. Yeah, it's not goaltending because Thomas isn't there anymore.
But he's just as good.
If not better.
Yeah, and he's going to be there. He's not just going to wander off.
No, he's proven he's going to be there, and he's going to be there for the whole series. And you got guys like Chara. We talked about it last week. using him down low in key situations.
Yeah, look, all the intangibles that you're talking about, the defense, the goaltending, the physicality, and the size, those lean towards Boston.
But then you got speed and skill on the Pittsburgh side of the coin. And I've always lived and died by the phrase speed kills. So if Pittsburgh can stay healthy and use their speed against Boston, they stand just as much a chance of taking this series as they do. You know, and which with the physicality conversation, it also brings me to Crosby just got cleared to practice without the jaw guard.
Yeah. Never want to be in a situation where somebody's talking about how I can now do something without the jaw guard. That's just never...
Clearly wearing that extra piece of equipment never prevented him from playing his game or scoring or anything else on the ice.
Oh, I'm not changing it if I'm him. Not now.
That was my question.
Okay.
Would you change?
No. Look, we see this in the NBA. Guys break their nose. And granted, it's the NBA, and they're not nearly as tough. I mean, they just aren't. I'm sorry, as professional hockey players. But you'll get used to the fact Rip Hamilton he had a broken nose, and he wore it for another 6 years after that. He looked like the Phantom of the Opera out there. But part of it is a comfort thing, too. But more than that, if you're Sidney Crosby, you just made it through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Like you said, you're obviously fine. You have 7 goals. You're right now tied for the NHL lead in goals in these playoffs. It's not affecting you negatively. Why take it off now?
I'm also afraid of the fact that, okay, my jaw's healed. The docs say it's okay to play. I can take it off now. But it hasn't been that long since the injury.
It's been like a month and a half.
And to me, as an individual, I'm going, you know what, let's just wear it for a few more games. I mean, I'm going up against a Chara. If I'm breaking into the zone and he's the defenseman I'm going up against, and you know he's going to be on the ice if Crosby's on the ice, and he decides he's going to take that big 8-foot-tall body of his and throw me into the boards.
Who wouldn't want to have a jaw guard when you're facing Chara at this point?
Well, that's my point.
Whether it's broken or not.
Boston just plays a physical hockey game.
Look, superstitious hockey players are not going to change anything. So there's one right there.
There's the other thing.
And Crosby is just as guilty of that as any professional hockey player, especially this time of year. But the other thing is...
I'm a beer leaguer, and I put my skates, my socks, my shin pads all on in a certain order, and it has never, ever changed.
And it's not going to change.
And it's not going to change.
So in this case, yeah, he's not going to wear the jaw guard next year, but you take the preseason and training camp to adjust. Now, you don't want to be making adjustments in the playoffs. The fear was coming in, yeah, he's coming back, he's got to adjust to wearing a jaw guard. Well, now you've made that adjustment. Why would you now adjust to not having it against, like you said, a much more physical... Ottawa and the Islanders didn't hit the Penguins, which I don't understand.
I don't either, especially Ottawa. I thought Ottawa was going to be very physical against the Penguins, and they weren't.
They kind of went at the Islanders, kind of went after Malkin. And the only thing that does is wake him up. I mean, he kind of disappears sometimes. It's tough to say about a guy who has 16 points or whatever he has in the playoffs, but he can kind of float around, and then you hit him, and he wakes up.
Right.
So of all the players to not hit on the Penguins, that's the only one the Islanders did hit. Yeah, Chris Neal I thought would be more physical. I just thought Ottawa was weird. And honestly, I hadn't got your thoughts on this either because I haven't seen you in a couple of days. Daniel Alfredsson's comments after, was it game 4 when they were down 3-1, and everybody kind of went off, and they're like, what are you saying? But when they asked him if you think you guys can come back from down 3-1, he was like, no, probably not. And that's so strange to me coming from Daniel Alfredsson, who's such a leader. But at the same time, it's kind of refreshing that he was honest, and I think it just kind of symbolized the whole team. They didn't play like they thought they could win that series.
Yeah, I mean, they had a weird season. I think that getting as far as they got was their season. I mean, that team, and we've talked about it in past podcasts, but I mean, that team faced so many adversities just to get where they were going to get. And then, of course, they hit Pittsburgh as the engine was revving at its peak. And they just met a better team. That's all.
Well, and Ottawa was trying to make those adjustments. You break Jason Spezza back, you're trying to adjust.
And we talked about that, right? And now we come right back
to Crosby.
And we come back to chemistry.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about it last week. We throw Spezza in. What's that going to do? Who's going to sit? Who's going to play?
He's got to adjust because he hasn't played in a while. So it's not like he steps back out there as Jason Spezza. He steps back out there as a guy trying to get back to 100% on the fly.
Right. And he was still playing hurt, we find out.
And it was a completely different injury. But I'll tell you what, Ottawa's out now, and they had a ton of bad luck this season, I guess you could say, with injuries. The Crosby thing kind of symbolizes this, though. He's, I guess you would have to say, 100% healthy now. Everybody in the playoffs right now is pretty much at full strength. Penguins, Bruins, for the most part, are at full strength. I know the Bruins are missing a couple defensemen, but the guys they've brought in are actually playing better. Look over at Chicago. All their key players are playing. LA's guys, San Jose's, Detroit's. I don't know if that's a byproduct of a shortened regular season and that guys are healthy now because they didn't go through the grind of 82 games. I don't know if that's coincidence, but I do know this. 6 teams left probably are the 6 best teams in hockey this year, and they're all healthy. It's making for some very good playoffs.
Never thought of it that way, but you're right. And, wow.
I mean, not only is it all the past Cup champs, but they're all... It's not like we're seeing Chicago trail Detroit because Taves and Kane aren't there. Mm-hmm. In years past, it feels like it's just whichever team stays the healthiest. I think this year we're going to see whichever team is the best wins the Stanley Cup.
Well, we still got 3 original 6 teams in the playoffs. No more Canadian teams.
No.
2 Southern California teams.
Yeah.
Well, San Jose's not Southern California. 2 California teams.
No New York Rangers either. I guess we should touch on them since we're talking about all the best teams stepping up. We both picked the Rangers in round 2, and you and I have done pretty good with our picks. As I said before, 7-1 in round 1, but we both took the Rangers in round 2, and that was wrong.
Well, you know what? Again, we go back to chemistry, and I mentioned it in the first segment, and the New York Rangers were disappointing in the fact that on paper this team should still be playing. And they just couldn't get it to work. Could not get it to work. From Nash to Richards.
Richards wasn't even playing in one of those games. Literally was not
healthy
playing.
Scratch. Brad Richards was a healthy scratch.
For, I don't even remember the guy's name, Michael Haley? I mean, somebody that you didn't know was on the Rangers.
So, I'm not going to analyze that team, but that team should have done... I feel bad for Lindqvist. Because the guy played he played out of his skin. I mean, that guy, he better get a nice contract.
Well, and you're wasting his best years.
Correct.
We'll talk about Tortorella here in a second because there's all the speculation of is he going to get fired, which I think would be kind of idiotic. But this team made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The way they play, every series seems to go 7. Obviously, the Boston one didn't. They just kind of got ran over by the Bruins. But last year, every series went 7 games. And you could tell it kind of wore them down by the end. Lundqvist doesn't ever have a bad game, and you haven't won a Stanley Cup yet.
Which tells me that probably Tortorella's gone.
But see, now can you do that when you made the second round of the playoffs this year and you made the conference finals the year before? Is it a special case like we've also talked about in the past because it's Tortorella and his coaching style, maybe it's just kind of wearing on that team?
I can say yes because I look at this past series against Boston, and I look at that team's performance. Okay, you got to the semis, but you didn't do squat. You did nothing. You just got there. And how did you get there?
I don't really know. They got there because they played Washington, and Washington chokes away leads in the playoffs every year. That's how they got there. They took the momentum from that series and did nothing with it. Boston took the momentum from 2 minutes against Toronto and did everything with it. Because remember, the Bruins lost 2 in a row to get to Game 7 against the Maple Leafs.
Because that Washington series, I thought for sure Washington was going to take it.
Once they got up.
And then New York comes back. They win the series. I'm going, okay, now we're going to see something. We got some progression. And they did nothing against Boston. Zip. And scratching Brad Richards, token gesture.
I mean, when you're a team that can't score, I understand Brad Richards had a horrible playoffs. He did. And some of that, I think, was just the team in general couldn't do anything. The chemistry, like you said, was shot. And then you're moving Brad Richards around. I don't know if you're trying to punish him or what, but he's not going to score on the 4th line. He's obviously not going to score in the press box. And then when he comes back, he's not scoring in Game 5 when you need him to. It was just a mess. I mean, it's easy to lose perspective with that team. They did win a playoff series. They've won 3 playoff series in the last 2 years, but they just look so bad doing it.
Well, I mean, you got Rick Nash. You bring in Rick Nash to score goals. What did he do? This is my biggest beef with professional athletes is the fact that you sit down at a bargaining table and you demand all this money, and then when you go out there, you can't do anything. So why are you asking for all that money? The owners gave it to him, but I mean, still, it's just like if you're going to say I'm worth $6 million, then show me you're worth $6 million. And nobody on that Rangers roster earned their pay in the semis.
That's what's frustrating. I think you can look at some of these other series that have ended in these playoffs and you could say, look, everybody can't win. Only one team's happy at the end of the year. We played well, the other team played better, that's it. I mean, I think Toronto, you could say, the Maple Leafs played a very good series for the exception of a minute and a half.
Yep.
They're not happy with the way that series ended, but when they take a step back in 2 months, they're going to look back and say, we had a pretty good season. We played very well against a Bruins team that might win the Stanley Cup. The Rangers, they didn't even show up.
Well, that's the thing, right?
So I don't. That team makes no sense to me. They just baffle me. You watch some of their power plays in that series; they weren't even going after the puck. They just, I don't know. I don't know what they do there. My gut says you don't fire John Tortorella. He's a great coach. Look what he's done for this team the last few years. But at the same time,
he's gone.
They're going the wrong direction.
He's gone.
News and notes, final segment, Doug. Very quickly, I want to get your thoughts on Patrick Waugh, the new head coach of the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, has never been a head coach at the NHL level before. Had some success in the juniors. Plenty of success on the ice as a player. But I can't think of a whole lot of goalies off the top of my head that are successful NHL coaches. Not saying it can't happen. I just can't think of a lot of situations where it's even been an issue.
I think it was Colorado made the wrong decision, and I think they made the wrong decision because all his experience is in the juniors, in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, okay? He makes the playoffs, but can't push further. His winning percentage as a coach in the juniors is extremely, extremely high.
All right.
I think that goaltenders make really good coaches.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I liking goaltenders as catchers in baseball. And some of the best managers in baseball are the catchers. And the reason I say that is because they see everything. If you've ever played goal, the game comes to you, the game goes away from you. The game comes to you, the game goes to a goalie's almost like a quarterback. Because I play D, I've got a goalie when I'm on the ice chirping at me all the time. Watch your left, weak side, strong side. They're always barking commands because they see it, right? As a player, you're kind of focused on a left wing, but that goalie, man, he's kind of a quarterback back there directing traffic, and they see the ice a lot differently than a player sees the ice.
So that makes sense. So then why don't we see more goalies as coaches?
That I can't answer. My only reason why I think that taking he's a Hall of Famer, right?
I mean, yes.
He's a Hall of Famer.
One of the best ever.
Right. So my only problem is he's never had any experience in the NHL level. Great success in the juniors. It would be, to me, if you had like one or two as an assistant and then they jumped him up, I wouldn't have a problem. But, I mean, 8 seasons in the queue, he's had really good success in the regular season. He just hasn't had a lot of success in the post.
Well, Colorado hasn't even had success in the regular season lately,
but
so maybe
that's
that
such
translates.
A good young team. Why wouldn't you grab somebody like Vigneault?
Yeah, I don't
totally available.
I don't have an answer for you, to be honest. And I get what you're saying about the goaltending thing, and I certainly get what you're saying about you want to grab a guy from the AHL, a coach right there, because that kind of is the way things are working right now. Some of the better coaches, you're pulling guys up from the AHL, and they're hungry and they're taking the next step.
Okay, we're gonna jump into another thing, but the QMJHL right now is producing a lot of good hockey players. They're becoming the dominant league in the Canadian Hockey League. They've won the last 3 Memorial Cups,
which segues nicely for us.
So Halifax Mooseheads just won yesterday,
and they're loaded. They're absolutely loaded with talent.
They are loaded with talent.
And, if you didn't get to watch the Memorial Cup, I understand because there's NHL playoffs going on too. But the best part about the Memorial Cup, we talked about this last week. First of all the top picks just happen to be in this one. There's 4 teams left. Seth Jones is on Portland. He's probably going to be number 1. Nathan McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin are going to go 2, 3. We don't know which order yet, but they're both on Halifax. No coincidence that Halifax wins the whole thing. And look, in the last game, Drouin had 5 assists. McKinnon had a hat trick and 2 assists. So it's kind of like college basketball.
And Jones had a goal.
Yeah, he was in the game too.
Top 3 prospects were in that game.
And it's still, juniors is good because there's a lot of skill there, but there is also still that sort of...
Still that development edge to the game.
Yeah, so if you're a great player at the junior level, you're going to dominate. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the NHL, nobody really dominates anymore, which is fine. But like I said, it's like college basketball. A great player in college basketball is just going to run away with just take over games.
The thing I love about the juniors, though, is the caliber of the game. These guys play, I'm going to get myself in trouble, a 70-plus game schedule.
I'm calling the hockey police on you right now.
I think it's like a 70-game schedule, thereabouts, which is they play so many games in a season, it's likened to an 82 regular season game at the NHL level. So from a junior player standpoint, to go from juniors to the NHL, the jump isn't as big because you're used to that grind, you're used to the travel, you're used to the number of games. Where if you go from the NCAA to the NHL, NCAA you're only playing 40-plus games. All right, half.
Back to college basketball, you're going from 30 to 82.
Right.
And that's not even the same physical grind as in hockey.
So, but yesterday we got to see the top 3 prospects play in the game.
Some other good players in that game, too. I mean, it wasn't just Jones, McKinnon, and Drouin. You mentioned Derek Pouliot on Portland, who's already on Pittsburgh, or he's already been drafted by Pittsburgh. Martin Furk, who does not have a vowel on his last name, and I think that we need to make a bigger deal of this just as a nation. But he's on Halifax, already drafted by Detroit because the Red Wings need more offensive firepower. It was almost like a junior all-star game, and that's not always the case.
Well, and then on Portland, there's a player by the name of Ty Rattie, who just impressed the heck out of me.
12 points, second only to McKinnon in the entire Memorial Cup.
In 5 games. And to watch him play was phenomenal. And, and a guy that you and I both know, Sean Burke, assistant to the general manager for the Phoenix Coyotes, his son was on the Portland bench.
Yeah.
So again, there's that non-traditional hockey market producing hockey players on a really highly competitive team. So, but now the other thing is that the majority of these guys that just played yesterday, the NHL Combine started today and runs through June 1st.
And that's where this next month is going to get weird. Normally at this point of the year, we're pretty much wrapping up the conference finals. Sometimes I want to say at this point in the year, we're even already starting the Stanley Cup late May, right around Memorial Day weekend. We're pretty close to that. Now this year, we only have one conference final set, and they obviously haven't started playing yet. So we're going to have that. We're going to have the Stanley Cup in the second half of June, basically. We're going to have the combine stuff, like you just said, for the next few days. The draft is all one day at the end of June, and as we get closer to that, we'll give you a bit of a preview on that. I mean, we're going to have a lot on the top, at least 10, 15 prospects to look at.
Well, we started talking about Patrick Waugh being selected as the head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, and I made the statement that the QMJHL is really, really starting to rise to the top. They've won the last 3 Memorial Cups. The top 10 in North American skaters invited to the Combine, 50% of them are from the Q.
That's ridiculous. I mean, when you think about the talent that comes out of the OHL.
Right.
And those London teams in the mid-2000s that just cruised over everybody, it seemed like.
The OHL has 2 players selected in the top 10. I mean, there's that shift. The shift is happening. Why is it happening? We don't know. I mean, we could analyze it if we wanted to and try to figure it out. But the Q is producing really good players. In fact, Halifax, trying to think of the name of the player, had a guy that he was playing in his 3rd Memorial Cup yesterday because in the juniors they get traded.
Yeah.
So he was with St. John's and got traded back into Halifax, and he was in his 3rd Memorial Cup.
It would be like if college football had a playoff system in place that they actually used, and you saw the best teams play each year. And this is what's great. I mean, you see the best of the next level of players that are coming up. Think about hockey, too. More so than other sports, I'm trying to go back in my head the last 10 years. The number 1 pick every year, it feels like they're all still in the league over the last 10 years, and they're all good. I mean, we're talking about Ovechkin, we're talking about Crosby, we're talking about Stamkos, Tavares. Like, teams don't normally miss with that number 1 pick.
No, and usually I'd have to look it up, but I bet you the majority of those number 1 picks come out of the juniors.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, but almost all of them.
Back to why I said, the number of games. If I'm a player and I'm a young man and I have a chance to play junior hockey or NCAA, I'm going junior.
You have to. Yeah, and this is from a guy that loved college, but you need to go to junior hockey.
I would go to junior hockey and get my education on the back end.
Yeah, you can
instead of the front end. I think that's one of the reasons that Kyle Turris has taken so long to develop. He left too early. He didn't have enough seasoning. He left. He should have finished out at Wisconsin before he even thought of jumping into the NHL. But, all of this, we're talking about junior players and stuff. We're talking about development and stuff. Some big news came down out of Saskatchewan. Hockey Canada's board of directors voted overwhelmingly
That's Canada, different language.
To take body checking out at the Peewee level.
Yeah, this is where it gets... It's all a matter of opinion here, because even what we were just talking about, there are players that have gone through college and had great NHL careers. So it's not the same for everybody. And so if you're a governing body over especially junior and lower level hockey in Canada, you're trying to come up with rules that are going to fit everybody, and they're just not. Some players are going to be hurt by rules like this, some are going to be helped. But Team USA has already done this. They've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, USA Hockey took checking out at the Peewee level, and for people that don't, that's typically 11 and 12-year-olds a couple of years ago. And I'm a youth hockey coach, and I'm starting to see the attrition and the benefit of that. I was never a fan of it in the beginning because I had players that were checking, and then they become a second-year Peewee. Now they couldn't check, which is going to happen in Canada. But once that the 2-3 seasons get passed and that attrition takes place, the whole purpose is concussions, improving skill, their skill level. Instead of going into a corner thinking, I got to hit this guy, you angle him off. You take the puck away from him on the angle. You use body positioning. You use all kinds of different skills, and players become more skilled. And that doesn't mean body checking is taken out of the game, because as a coach, if you got a second-year Peewee, you still need to teach him how to hit so that when he becomes a Bantam at the U14, he's not going to get hurt.
Well, and I think the safety thing is something we're seeing all the way through hockey, all the way up to the NHL level, and now we're seeing it down with the Peewee level and maybe even and below that too. You mentioned concussions. It's not just concussions, but certainly concussions, that's the main one. You don't want to be losing players. I don't want to make a statement here that's going to get all of Canada angry at me. There's obviously more hockey players in Canada. Mm-hmm. It's still the hotbed for hockey, whether they overvalue how valuable they are to hockey or not. But it does feel like in recent years, USA Hockey is moving in the right direction, whereas Canadian hockey, there's all the panic you see sometimes in the hockey news and just in the media up there that less and less of their kids are playing hockey, or it's not growing as much. There's not as much room for it to grow in Canada as there is in the U.S., but you don't want to be having kids getting hurt when they're 11 and 12 and then just quitting hockey.
Okay. It's, to me, and real quick, I'll try to make this point real quick, I think Canada is just stuck in their traditions and stuck in their ways, whereas USA Hockey had to grow the sport. It wasn't growing. So let's take a progressive look at things. And we'll go down to mites and squirts. USA Hockey has this thing called the ADM program, where a lot of those little guys, they skate cross ice. There's no sense having a 5-year-old skate 200 feet.
No.
He's never going to touch the puck. So you do a cross ice game. Comes out of Europe too, small game stuff. So you start implementing stuff like that. You take checking out at a younger age, so that we get these guys skating, we get these guys touching the puck, we get them being more skilled athletes rather than just always going into the corner and trying to hit a guy. Because at a young age, it's hard to teach them, even though you're always teaching them that you just want to separate the guy from the puck. We're not going in there to knock his block off. We're just going in there, we're going to hit his body, get him off his balance, and try to steal the puck away from him or separate him from the puck. Yeah, we see in the NHL big booming hits and stuff, but that's not the point of a check.
Yeah, that's not where it starts. If you're going around just trying to hit people and get on the highlight reel just for the hit, then you've messed up probably 3 or 4 plays where you could have taken the puck earlier. And then you get that hit, but you lose. It's like the old thing where you go back to stats. Usually the team that has the most hits in a hockey game is the team that lost because they didn't have the puck enough.
I've been on the bench and I've screamed at players, stop admiring your hit, get the puck. Because a guy will make a big booming hit. Like, oh, look at me, I'm a tough guy, right?
Somebody else is out there with the puck.
And somebody else just scooped up the loose puck.
If you don't have the puck, somebody else does. The puck's never just floating around in a hockey rink. It's not like soccer where half the time the ball is just rolling around and it's never really a threat to score.
I balked at it when USA Hockey did it. I support it now. I think Hockey Canada did the right thing. I know hockey dads in Canada are going to be having a few Molsons debating this for a long time, but I think it's the right thing.
Well, and bigger picture, again, I'm not trying to just bag on Canadian hockey. This is not meant as disrespect to them, but we've talked about this. They won the Olympic gold medal almost 4 years ago. The World Juniors, they didn't medal. The World Championships just this past month, they didn't even medal. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, and you have to look at the other teams too, but the Europeans focus on a skill game. Canada has the most talent in the world. So if you can get those guys focusing on skill early, like you said, and then you work hits in and you're hitting for the right reasons instead of hitting being the main focus and turning it into football, that's going to help them out. It may take 10 years.
And one last note, too, is that in 1965,
wow,
the equipment was a lot different. 1975, the equipment was a lot different. 85, 95. In the year 2013, the skates are feather light. The sticks are feather light. These kids are training a lot more than they ever would before. Before it was we took a wooden stick and we went out on a backyard rink and played. And I know that sounds, romantic and stuff, but it's the truth. The gear that these kids are wearing right now are hard, they're durable, but they're so light. So even at the Peewee, if I got a second-year Peewee, 12 years old, flying, and these kids can skate.
And they're bigger.
People are going to get hurt. I think it's just the right thing to do and just get that skill level up. Every sport now, golf, all of it, because the equipment, the technology that we live in this year or in this era is making things bigger, faster, harder. I mean, look at the size of football players now. Now you put them on skates and they're going 30 miles an hour and they're hitting people. It's the right thing.
Well, just to be clear, I love football. There's people who fear that the NFL, the way it is now, isn't going to exist in 15, 20 years because of the injuries. Hockey's not going that direction, and we don't have to worry about that with hockey. But at the same time, if you can eliminate some injuries at a younger age and make the game better, I love hitting in hockey. You have to have hitting in hockey. I don't think either one of us debates that. And I don't even have a problem with fighting in hockey in the right situations. But how often do 11-year-olds really need to hit?
They don't.
So what are you doing then? Just do
body
this.
Positioning.
Just dance the game, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.